I'm running more than an hour late.
Clifford, here we are, back again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Patrick Santino. This is the Talking Tolkien podcast. And you are?
Clifford Vickery.
How's it going, Clifford?
Pretty good. We've got some beautiful weather here in Austin. I unfortunately was stuck inside for a good chunk of the day because I had to go into work on a Sunday, which is no fun. But I went for a long run this morning, doing some marathon training. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
How late were you today?
An hour and 15 minutes, something like that. In other words, if I was a full hour late, I still would have been running late for the hour delay. But anyways,
Yeah.
How are you, Patrick?
You're no.
Let me just rub this in a little bit.
You're lucky you are difficult to replace.
Thanks.
That's what I'll say about that.
Okay.
And we're also, we're now tallying Clifford's lateness to around 10
years
hours.
of Patrick's life.
Around 10 hours of my life. Luckily, I've started the habit of having something to do while I wait for you, because I just expect it.
Well, I apologize. Today was particularly bad.
Yeah, I've been pretty good. We're watching a Bears game right now. It's when they played the Eagles. I mean, this is out of time context, but if I seem like I'm not paying attention to Clifford, it's probably because of
Nice.
But yeah, all right. So let's go on with it, though. Oh wait, we gotta do topics first.
Yeah.
All right. So for this episode,
Well, real quick, this is episode 13 of the Talking Tolkien podcast. We're going to be talking about chapter 13 of The Hobbit, Not at Home.
Yeah, so we got a couple things to hit here. So we'll talk about Bilbo finding the Arkenstone, and again, how cowardly the dwarves were, but then also how greedy the dwarves were. We'll talk about the decision to leave Lonely Mountain again and go to the watchtower thing. And then we'll dabble into the Silmarillion, because we'll discuss whether or not the Arkenstone is possibly a Silmarillion.
Exciting.
Yeah. All right, cool. But before we do all that, let's go Cliff's Notes. Bring it on.
Okay, so this was a fairly mellow chapter in terms of action, but we've got some stuff to talk about. Bilbo and the dwarves are stuck inside the secret entrance to Smaug's lair when we find them. This is after Smaug had attempted to destroy their hideout in the last chapter with fire and fury, and the rocks collapsed, and so they're stuck inside at the top of the secret tunnel. Frustration and suffocation lead Bilbo to declare he's going to march down to Smaug's cave, saying basically, I've done it twice when I knew there was a dragon at the other end, so now what's the issue with doing it a third time when I'm not sure that there's a dragon? The dwarves reluctantly follow Bilbo to the dark, empty cavern. Bilbo scouts ahead, afraid constantly of being surprised by Smaug lying in wait, but instead he finds the Arkenstone, the heart of the mountain, the most beautiful jewel he's ever seen, and the secret passion of Thorin. The dwarves eventually join and stuff their pockets with gold while Thorin searches in vain for the Arkenstone. They make their way out the front door of the cave, past the mouth of the river running, and into the forested hills beyond. They're wary the whole time of a surprise attack from Smaug, but they find an old guard station in a cave on another part of the mountain where they lie in wait. So, looming threat the whole time, but we don't see a dragon at all.
We don't.
So,
What'd you...
go ahead.
Okay, go on. No, you go on.
Uh,
I guess we'll talk about Smaug at the end since he wasn't here.
mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna say what did you think, but let's just say that.
I mean, this type of thing, even if it's pretty basic, is like it's why I don't like horror movies that much. I get real antsy and uncomfortable, even though it's a book. I feel like the tension, like I'm waiting for the dragon to pop out at any minute or something like that. So it's entertaining, but it always stresses me out a little bit.
Yeah, see, I have the problem. I've read this too many times, so like this chapter is not stressful whatsoever. I mean, that's just the bummer here, but yeah. Okay, so you got any first questions?
Yeah, sure. So Bilbo remains bold. This chapter seems like he might be a little more motivated by frustration than by heroism. But meanwhile, Thorin seems to be stepping back up to the plate a little bit as the group leader. I was curious what your thoughts were on this.
Yeah, I think I don't know about frustration, but I think, so it starts off like, I don't know, let's just kind of go step by step through this one. So Bilbo starts off feeling some sort of lightning feeling, right? And he's inspired to go down again to the dragon, and he just commands or tells the group that you guys are coming with me this time. Like, we're all going to go together, and that's that. Right. So again, I think that goes back to our last chapter where we talked about how the apotheosis that Bilbo had, or that I claimed he had, that now he's just really absolutely running stuff. He's just telling the group, hey, you guys are going to come with me. We're going to do this. And then they do. Like, they follow Bilbo because, for all practical purposes, he's now the leader. And so they go and do that. And then, again, the dwarves are cowardly, which is no surprise over the past couple chapters, I'd say. Yeah,
I've been actually kind of surprised how much that gets reinforced. It's like that point gets driven home every chapter, it seems like.
Right, because they're cowardly here because they don't get out of the tunnel, right? Let's just name some of the examples here. And then, so Bilbo's going around, and I don't know, where did you actually see that he was frustrated?
I just got the impression that he was kind of up at the top of the tunnel. Was at one point, I've had enough. I'm sick of this. We can't sit here forever. They had been sitting there for like at least a day, probably. Right. So I mean, and so certainly everyone was frustrated, but Bilbo was the one who I thought was the first to say, "Screw this, I'm going, no matter what happens."
I think it was more of not out of frustration. I think it was like the lightening feeling that he had that made him go. That happened after, and I don't really want to comment now why I think he would have had that at whatever moment he did.
Okay, interesting.
So
you're alluding to something you can't tell us about?
Yeah, I think it happens in the future.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, but anyways, they get down there. So then Bilbo's searching around, and he finds the Arkenstone at the top of the pile of treasure.
Right. He sees a glowing light, and he's afraid that it's the fire of a dragon's breath or something like that, but it turns out to be this glowing jewel.
Yeah, so I mean, fair enough to Bilbo that he takes that thing. It's the dwarves' own fault they aren't walking out of the tunnel at this point. I'm so frustrated. I'm frustrated with the dwarves at this point that they're being so cowardly that... Bilbo, you do whatever you want. You're running this game.
It seemed to me like there's some parallels with finding the Arkenstone and finding the ring.
Yeah.
We don't really know what the thing is, but it seems like it has a lot of great power, and Bilbo's the unsuspecting hero who's stumbling across it, basically, and is like, I wonder what this is, and puts it in his pocket without thinking twice.
So I'm thinking here, let's give a little description of what the Arkenstone actually is, but we'll talk in depth about it at the end of the episode.
Okay.
If that sounds cool?
Yeah. That was going to be my next question, is tell me all about it. But it sounds like, give me a brief little description, and then we'll get further into it.
So the book was talking about the Arkenstone here, and this was the description I had. The great jewel shone before his feet of its own inner light, and yet, cut and fashioned by the dwarves, who dug it from the heart of the mountain long ago, it took all the light that fell upon it and changed it into 10,000 sparks of white radiance, shot with glints of the rainbow. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Sounds to me like a glowing diamond or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's like a gem is what, I don't know. I don't really know the difference between gems and diamonds, do you?
I think a diamond might be a type of gem.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll go with that. But yeah, so he finds that thing, and like, I mean, we started hearing a couple of references to it in the last chapter when they were waiting around between their Bilbo's engagements with Smaug, basically, and they were sitting around talking about it. But I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that the Arkenstone's a really big deal, and it's going to be a big deal for the rest of the book here. So Bilbo takes it, and he decides not to tell the dwarves about it.
Right.
What do you make of that?
Well, once again, it's the same thing he did with the ring before, but it's clearly setting up a conflict because Thorin is searching for it and is also not telling anyone that he's searching for it. So,
right.
Whether it's good or bad that Bilbo's being secretive, Thorin's also being secretive. So, once again, I don't really blame Bilbo because I think he's taking it pretty fair.
Well, in my opinion, when Bilbo found the ring, he was keeping it because he wanted to... He didn't tell the dwarves about it because he wanted to gain their respect, basically. And if he told them that they had a magic ring, then they would think less of him. Then again, they didn't end up after he did a bunch of deeds, like when he saved them from the spiders, because he had to tell them about it then. And of course, when he got them from the barrels, he had to tell them, or if they didn't already know. Right. But with the Arkenstone here, I don't know. I actually think that's more so just the power of the treasure. Like Bilbo might even be falling for it.
Certainly.
To some extent.
Certainly. But I felt that way with the ring a little bit, even though it never says it explicitly. I think there's an implication that it has a will or a force to it that influences thoughts a little bit.
I think it'd be both in both cases, but with the ring, it's more so respect to the dwarves, whereas here, I don't really see, if you told him they found the Arkenstone, how would he get respect or anything? Like, I feel like this is...
Yeah, they'd probably be ready to shiv him or something.
Yeah. What did you... Well, all right. So the other part of your question was Thorin stepping back up as like the group leader here.
Yeah, he kind of re-enters as an actual character and not just one of the dwarves.
Well, so there's quickly the part where Bilbo's torch goes out, and Bilbo's actually scared. And then he's scared until the dwarves' light shows, and it's Thorin that goes out with the dwarves to go get him again. And as soon as the light comes back, Bilbo's like back to his normal, like, actual, I say normal at this point, but his competent self, like, clearly leader of the journey. But when the light went out, he's kind of scared. Certainly. What do you make of that?
Well, yeah, he's constantly got an internal tension about basically not necessarily wanting to be on the journey, being thrown into these situations and having intense remorse or regret or nostalgia for the way things were when they were simpler and he wasn't being challenged at all. So for me, that's just a recurring thing for him. In terms of Thorin coming back into play, I suppose makes sense. It feels a little bit like, now that Bilbo's done most of the work to get us here, or has certainly been instrumental in saving our asses numerous times, Thorin's kind of happy to take the reins as like, I'm back. I'm team captain now, that times are not as traumatic.
Yeah, like now he's home, and so he's all kind of excited again when he knows that there's no changer around.
He's being bold and showing some heroism by leading the dwarves, but it's not, he wasn't necessarily showing that heroism when it really counted.
Yeah.
When they were first describing the Arkenstone, I assumed that it was some giant rock, but Bilbo puts in his pocket, so I'm assuming it can't be that big.
Well, he said he couldn't wrap it around his fist, so it's bigger than his fist.
Okay, so maybe like the size of a grapefruit.
Yeah, I don't know. He probably had to put it in his deepest pocket. It would be my guess.
You don't think Thorin is like, Bilbo, what's that giant rock banging around in your pocket?
Right, yeah, and there's probably... Yeah, there might have been a couple of times where, like, he would maybe take off his jacket and, like, there's a big weight coming down from it.
Yeah.
And, nobody knows, like, hey, Bilbo, what's that big... Yeah. What's weighing down your jacket right now?
Then again, all the other dwarves were stuffing their pockets with gold and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Should we start there, then?
Yeah. So, is there anything we should know about all this treasure they're grabbing? And also, on that note, I noticed they armed themselves from the old armory. It seems like a kind of a little bit like coming full circle for them to be preparing for battle with the materials of their former kingdom. It feels very proper.
So I was thinking, why are they wasting their time and like weighing themselves down, taking all this small stuff or whatnot? But I think it's because, you know, they don't know where the dragon is. So he could come back at any minute and they might have to run away for good. So they might as well have something at all, you know? So like that's why they took whatever pocket-sized stuff they could.
Makes sense.
And then when Thorin actually armed himself, I actually thought that was a pretty cool description.
Oh, yeah.
In my notes, Thorin sounds cool dressed in
Nice. Yeah. Bilbo's thing sounded cool as well, though.
What thing is that?
The special coat, like the special mail coat he got.
The mithril coat?
Yeah.
Yeah, so anybody that knows Lord of the Rings, even just the movies, you know, could kind of know how big a deal this thing is.
Yeah, it certainly comes in handy in the future. But for now, it sounds like a very special thing. It goes perfectly with his little dagger, which was also just a small elven sword. So like,
right. I took notes here saying that this was originally for a young elf prince. This mithril coat. I thought that was kind of interesting. An elf prince, you know, as opposed to some small dwarf or something.
Right, but just like his sword is maybe not the finest of elf armor, but for like relatively speaking, is a pretty amazing thing.
Well, without going into it super deep, the mithril is basically, you can say, a product of Thorin and Durin's people. But they said this was intended for an elf, so somehow it was given to an elf, like a young elf as a gift, but now somehow it's back in the treasure. No idea how, but...
Interesting. You think it might have been whoever that elf was got killed by dwarves or something?
I don't know if they got killed by dwarves, but I don't know, maybe he was there at like the massacre or something and he was wearing it when he was talking to the dwarves. I don't know, it shows that like the elves and dwarves probably had some sort of not hostile conflict.
By massacre, you're talking about that little recap you gave us a while ago from when the dwarves and elves fought during the Silmarillion.
No, I'm talking about when Smaug attacked.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, understood. Anyways, special coat, we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, we will. I thought the one sentence too here, and when the heart of a dwarf, even the most respectable, is awakened by gold and by jewels, he grows suddenly bold, and he may become fierce. So, you know, the dwarves have been complete cowards not even coming out of the tunnel. And then as soon as they see the gold and, like, know that the coast is clear, then they're stupidly greedy and not aware of their surroundings just immediately. Which, I don't know, that's just more of a dwarf quality. I mean, what are you going to do? That's just kind of in their nature, I'd say. What do you think of that?
Extreme greed.
Yeah.
Even though it's a quality that he's attributing to dwarves, certainly I would imagine Tolkien telling this to his kids, like, it's pretty easy to see that quality in people a lot of times. So it's a very, like, imageable or understandable description.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what I've kind of been saying a couple times here, where you have men, but then elves are a little bit above men, closer to unfallen or angelic beings, almost. And then dwarves are a little bit closer on, like, the animal scale, like, closer to animals as opposed to men, you know, so, like, they're more materialistic, and it obviously is a product of that greedy. Right.
And then Bilbo, with all these categorizations of, like, the different races, Bilbo always is kind of an outlier.
Yeah, hobbits probably are, yeah.
Like, you don't expect anything of him, but Bilbo, he doesn't seem particularly strong, but he's amazingly resilient.
Amazingly resilient, but I wouldn't say completely, because there's a line here. All the same, Mr. Baggins kept his head more clear of the bewitchment of the horde than the dwarves did. But, you know, not completely, because he took the Arkenstone and he's hiding it from the dwarves. And Thorin, I mean, like, they make a point of saying he's completely looking for it right now, you know?
Well, yeah, for Bilbo, to me that was the same as when he was talking to the dragon, and they point out that he's being slightly wooed by whatever special talking the dragon does, but he has more of a resistance to it than most would.
Yeah, right? I don't know. This, I actually think maybe there's the word bewitchment kind of makes me think, yeah, maybe this hoard of gold is kind of cursed. Yeah, because of Smaug, and Bilbo's, to the least extent of everybody that we've met, is still somewhat falling for it. Yeah,
to me, it makes me think that in building Bilbo's character, Tolkien is deliberately, like, he's got just the right amount of, like, weakness or corruption that he's relatable. Like, he's not kind of pure but unrelatable, like elves are, who are like these amazing heroes but are kind of distant from our own experience. And then clearly the greed of the dwarves is being portrayed as a negative quality, and Bilbo is effectively torn between the two, like a real person in real life is constantly torn between like a kind of morally pure and corrupted set of decisions or something like that. A relatable hero, once again. After they gather the treasure, they make their way out the front door of the cave, which... What did you think about that? First of all, they had descriptions of all these crazy winding staircases and passageways to get the troop out. Like, there's a lot of complexity to this whole thing, and I've envisioned a gaping hole that Smaug can fly into on a regular basis.
Well, all right, so first of all, when they were running around the passageways, they were talking about saying stairs that were cut of living stone. What do you think living stone means?
I took that to mean that it's like cut directly from the mountain. It's not pieces of stone. Like when we build things out of stone today, we cut blocks of stone out of the ground, cut them up, make shapes out of them, and then assemble them together and stack them like Legos. And this is the opposite. This is like carving a pit in the ground in perfect shapes. Okay. So it's like mining. Like if you imagine a mine shaft that's perfectly made. So I think that living stone means that it's still part of the mountain and it was never detached from the mountain, which is super cool. I actually, for anyone interested in this out there, there's a series of super ancient Hindu temples in India that are cut directly out of the stone in exactly this way, that are, obviously I've never seen in person, but are pretty remarkable. Just like kind of crazy that they were able to build it.
What are some names of those?
I was just looking it up. Okay, so people can look up pictures. If you check out Kailasa Temple, that's Kailasa, there are these like series of temples that are just cut into the ground, and everything, all the carvings and stuff are basically this description of living stone.
Cool.
Anyways,
so anyways, the other thing I was thinking about when they were exiting this place is, so they came in through that secret door or whatever, but besides the front gate and that secret door, is there no other way into this mountain? Like, there's no other small little side entrances or anything that they didn't know about?
I was thinking there have to be. I assume, in my mind, there's this thing's like a big old maze. There's multiple doorways.
Then why weren't they going for any other of them? They went for that secret one.
Maybe because the other ones are just more isolated. Like it would put them back on the exposed mountainside or something like that. I don't know.
No. See, I thought there's only one, and then I was like, all right, this is a kid's book. Let's not overanalyze it.
Fair.
That was my only thinking on it. But
yeah.
But anyways, let's see. Where should we go with this? What? It's kind of Thorin that leads them out, and then
Thorin definitely takes the lead at this point.
Well, he knows the way the best.
Yeah.
It sounds like him and Balin. I don't know if any other dwarves were really there before Smaug destroyed it, like that used to live there. Right. I think they might have been the only two.
Yeah, they remember it. And then, notably, Thorin's mood also significantly improves. Even though he doesn't find the Arkenstone, it's from the description, he's happy for the first time in the book. Like, he's joking around and...
Yeah, I mean, Thorin's like just... I don't know, it's almost stupid how happy he is because he's acting like the dragon's already defeated.
Right.
At any point, the dragon could jump out at us. You know? I mean, he could be around any of these turns, basically. Or sunbathing out on the top of the mountain.
Yeah, totally. That's the whole thing that stressed me out is like, as soon as they relaxed a little bit, it makes it seem like Smaug's going to pop out somewhere. Yeah. So they make their way over to this kind of secret cave guard station thing and hide out there. Do you see... what's the opposite of foreshadowing? Like recurrent plot themes, like they point out that whatever watchmen were hanging out in this little guard tower must have been too laid back and comfortable when Smaug originally attacked, because if they weren't as comfortable, they would have had more warning.
Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting line. I don't really know how to comment on it besides, like, yeah, it's kind of ominous, I think, is what you're getting at,
exactly.
Or bittersweet or something.
Ominous is the best word I'm thinking of.
Yeah, but it's like, even if the guards had time, how much time would that have given them if they were more alert? And then what could they have actually done to stop Smaug? I don't think we'll really know, because I don't think we knew how the whole mountain operated.
Right.
But yeah, I thought that was an interesting line too.
Well, so what about these birds that they see as they're making their way to the guard station? They see, I think, a bunch of thrushes, kind of like that one thrush on the backside of the mountain who originally helped show them the back door.
I think it just said birds gathering, but yeah, I also thought that was ominous.
Are they spies? Are they listening?
I don't think we know yet, but
okay.
You know, he mentions us right at the end of the chapter, and the whole chapter ends. You know, when you finish the chapter, you gotta be wondering, like, well, where's Smaug? I mean, we just went this whole chapter, and then we get the actual title. Like, we understand the actual title, Not at Home. It's Smaug that's not at home.
True.
Originally, I had somewhat wondered. It's like, oh, is this like Bilbo's not at home? Well, he hasn't been at home the whole book, but
yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, yeah, so the one other time we were talking about the bird, the thrush, it was another kind of like spooky observation thing where it was hanging around them, definitely paying attention, seeming like it was spying, but you don't really know who it's talking to. And that was shortly before Smaug attacked their hideout. So
well, it was during the thrush was there when Bilbo was talking to the dwarves about when he talked to Smaug and how he found like the weakness of Smaug and like all the riddling that he did with Smaug. So true. So we still don't actually know the whole effect of that, if there was any. But yeah, birds are coming into prominence in this book.
Okay, so I guess we'll sit tight on that as well.
I think we have to.
Should we double back to dive into the Arkenstone a little bit more?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, sure. Let's do it.
All right, so back to the Arkenstone. Give me a little bit more background beyond just The Hobbit.
All right, well, the book that we've started to tell stories of seemingly at random from in this, as we've done The Hobbit here, is what book?
The Silmarillion. For those regular listeners, Patrick's given us some background on the Silmarillion a handful of times. The stories are a lot lengthier and more complex than a lot of these shorter snippets or episodes from The Hobbit. But from what I recall, being the layman in the situation, the Silmarillion is a book all about the Silmarils. Well, it's about all of Middle-earth, but it's about one of the key focuses is the Silmarils, which are a series of two gems.
3, dude.
3. Sorry. Well, okay, three gems. I remember because they're made from the light of.
Oh, okay, fair. Okay.
The kind of silver and golden tree, the 2 trees, which were kind of like the sun and the moon in this earlier.
Well, the sun and the moon were produced from the remains of those 2 trees when they were killed.
So this was kind of a world of gods and angels type thing in the context of Middle-earth before the creation of elves. And it was also, we get the foundation of where bad things start to spread in the world, but also how elves are made and eventually how men are created. And when the elves are made, one of their early, smiths of some sort transforms the light of these 2 trees that lit up the world into 3 gems called Silmarils, which hold, of course, magical, mythical power.
Yeah, and who's that guy?
Fëanor?
Yeah, alright. Yeah, so Fëanor, alright, so he did that, and then, again, this will probably be like the 3rd time we've recapped this. The Silmarils were stolen by the big evil, the most evil guy ever, Melkor, who then they're so pissed at him they call him Morgoth because they don't even want to speak his name, right? And so then he goes back to he runs away to Middle-earth, and then Fëanor leads 1/3 of the elves that are in Valinor back to Middle-earth, and he's basically their leader. And so anyways, the story that we're going to we are going to get to the story. But anyways, there's a big question here whether the Arkenstone is a Silmaril or not.
Okay, as in the Arkenstone might be this precious stone from the dwarves.
It might be one of the 3 Silmarils, yeah.
Okay.
So we had the description of it. It sounds like a really cool gem. It seems like it's very enchanting and people lust after it. Yeah, so maybe it is a Silmaril.
Well, okay, so you'd have to unpack that for me, because I thought in this chapter they said the Arkenstone came from the heart of the mountain and the Silmarils were made by Fëanor back in the old days.
Right, so for this we're going to do another Silmarillion story. We're going to go all the way to the end of the Silmarillion proper to get this story. At this point, you remember when we were talking about, in the 9th chapter, when we were talking about the quarrel between the dwarves and the elves, the original quarrel?
Mm-hmm.
That was over one of the Silmarils that had actually been recovered from Morgoth.
Mm-hmm.
So Morgoth had 3, one was stolen, and the elves got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, so that's not the story of this one. That one eventually got passed down a couple generations throughout the family, and then somehow huge adventure story on that we'll talk about at some point. But anyways, all you need to know for this is it actually ends up shining out in the sky like a star in the nighttime.
Okay.
Right? So that one's out of question. So now there's really only kind of 2 Silmarils left.
Right.
And so now the good guys were really losing the war at this, like, originally Fëanor, and we're going to call Fëanor the good guys team, the elves team, basically. And so they had this huge war to try to get back the Silmarils, and so some people managed to recover one of them, but there were still the 2 left, and eventually the war turned out really bad to try to get those 2 back, to where the elves, Fëanor's whole side was basically destroyed, and Fëanor had 7 sons, and even those ended up dying.
Mm-hmm.
And it came down to just his last 2 sons that were left, and those sons' names were Methros and Maglor.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's kind of that's the story that we're focusing on here. Now, the good guys were doing so bad that eventually one person from the elves contingent basically actually got the Valar, or the gods, to help him.
Okay.
Just send help, finish this war against Melkor, even though that they were losing Melkor and Morgoth, even though they were losing so bad. And so what ends up happening is the Valar, who are the head gods out in Valinor, they don't go themselves, but they send all the lesser gods, which are called the Maiar, and they're led by Ianwi, who's like basically the head of the lesser gods, and you can kind of think of them as like a second generation, not quite as good, but still really powerful gods.
Okay.
And they come back to Middle Earth in like this huge host or whatever, and they basically, it's called the War of Wrath, and when the gods fight, even if it's the lesser gods, the whole world just goes up in like a tumult. Things are destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't end well for the land. Like the whole world's reshaped when they fight.
Right.
So there was that one subcontinent, Beleriand, that I was talking about. At this point, when the gods are fighting so much, that it ends up just destroying itself and like sinking into the sea, because like their battles were so big, I guess.
Okay.
But anyways, that war ends with them capturing Melkor, and they recover the 2 Silmarils.
Okay.
So meanwhile, Methros and Maglor, the only 2 remaining sons of Fëanor who created the Silmarils,
right?
They're the only ones left.
So like, let's get Dad's jewels back.
Right, so Fëanor and his 7 sons, originally before they left Valinor to go fight this war, had sworn that they would kill anybody that held the Silmaril besides them. Like that was their whole job, was we're going back and we're getting these Silmarils. And I mean, it was like a terrible oath, and they ended up doing a bunch of terrible stuff that we're not going to talk about. So like, Methros and Maglor are kind of
like a mob.
Yeah, Methros and Maglor end up kind of being a mixed bag. Like, they did some really, really terrible stuff, and their family definitely did some really, really terrible stuff. But they also did some good stuff, including being basically foster fathers or uncles for a character we've actually met in this book that I won't reveal yet.
What? Okay.
but
yeah,
so,
that sounds like a good like mob TV story to me.
Maybe. I don't know.
The setup. The conflicted family with the like corrupted oath, and they are like powerful and do good things and bad things.
Well, yeah, all right. So there's more I can get to that,
Okay,
but first, let's just keep going here. So Ianwi, he's he was the leader of the whole army, and he had the victorious camp of the Maiar, which are the lesser gods, and they're camped out with a bunch of all the elves that helped him in this war too, and they had the Silmarils under guard. And so Maglor and Methros say, hey, it's our duty to recover these things. They belong to our father who's gone, so now we inherit them. You got to give them to us. And Ianwi was basically saying, no. Of all this bad stuff that you guys have done, you no longer have a claim to these things. Right. No. You do not get these. So that's it. And so Methros and Maglor are thinking on their oath, and they're just saying, like, they're sick of it. Like, I mean, this is where, maybe it even does get to be more of a mob story, because, they do know that they've done bad stuff, and they don't want to keep having to fight people to get these things back. And I mean, they're just worn out, and, and to the point where Maglor's saying, you know what, that's fair. Like, let's do it. Like, let's just end this. Like, let's just go face whatever we're supposed to face, and our oath is done. We can't get it anymore. But Methros, I think it's because he's the oldest son of Fëanor, so he might feel even more pressure to carry on his dad's legacy more so than any of the other sons. Okay. He says, no, we have to do this oath, no matter how much I hate it at this point. We have to go out with this, and we have to recover these things until we either get them or we die. I mean, it's one or the other. Yeah, I know we've done terrible stuff, but that's it. So they decide to steal the Silmarils. So they end up sneaking into the camp, killing a couple guards that are guarding them, and then they get the Silmarils, but then they're immediately surrounded by the whole army. But Ianwi's, this is the end of the war, and Ianwi's like, no, enough blood's been shed. Just let them go if that's what they're going to do. We're not going to kill these two, too, which is, I don't know, kind of it was like really throwaway lines in the book, but I guess you could question that more, but we won't.
So, you think it's kind of a cop-out?
Well, I don't know how you just let him go, but whatever.
Right.
I guess he doesn't want a single other person to die.
It's like anyways, props for trying.
Right. So anyways, these guys are running away with the Silmarils, and then the Silmarils, each one has one, because there's two Silmarils left, two brothers left. So they're running away, and then the Silmarils end up burning their hand. And if you read the whole book, you'll see that that's a recurring theme, that when somebody grabs a Silmaril who, isn't entitled to it, their hand starts to burn in their grasp, because
so the Silmarillion's telling them that they're not actually entitled to it, even though they're the inheritors or whatever.
Right. So Ianwi was probably right when he said, no, you guys have done such terrible things that no, you guys don't deserve these anymore.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so right. So then what happens is Methros. This is kind of weird, but if we remember that the whole continent might be collapsing and combusting, Methros is like so burned by his jewel that he's holding, and he's the older son who really wanted to go through with this plan. He was holding it, and then all of a sudden he says, the book says that there's this fiery pit that appears, and Methros is so like craze driven that he just jumps into the pit with the jewel and is burned up by fire and dies.
Nice.
Yeah, great. But maybe okay.
I'm joking. That sounds really foolish of him.
Meanwhile, Maglor's hand is burning too, and they're off towards the shoreline or whatever, and he just chucks it all the way into the sea because he's so burned, and so he throws it in the sea. Funny. But he's so filled with sorrow that that's kind of. Well, let me just read this. We got a little passage here. And it was told of Maglor that he could not endure the pain with which the Silmaril tormented him, and he cast it at last into the sea, and thereafter he wandered upon the shores, singing in pain and regret beside the waves. For Maglor was mighty among the singers of old, named only after Dairon of Doriath. He never came back among the people of the elves. And thus it came to pass that the Silmarils found their long homes, one in the airs of heaven, and one in the fires of the heart of the world, and one in the deep waters. So, we had said before that one of the Silmarils was basically like a star in the sky at this point. Methros went into the fiery chasm, and then, so one's in the earth now. And then one was thrown into the sea, so that's kind of like an elemental thing that the three are there. Like, one's in the sky, one's in the water, one's in the earth. And
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
That's about how the Silmarillion ends, yeah.
Okay. So, point being, this could have been in the mountain because it was in the earth, and it might have been the one from when Methros jumped in this flaming pit.
Right, so that's the question: is the Arkenstone the Silmaril of Methros when he fell into the earth?
Okay.
And so, we were kind of just doing this again. It was another opportunity to talk about a Silmarillion story, but I guess this is a legitimate question for people. I would say no, because the geography makes no sense whatsoever, because this happened west of Bilbo's house. If you look at like the big mountain of Wilderland, where Bilbo's house is west of that, and then you got the Misty Mountains, then you got Bjorn's country, then you got the Mirkwood, and then you got the Lonely Mountain.
Right.
How could that be at the heart of the Lonely Mountain if it happened west of Bilbo's house?
Fair.
So first of all, I'd say no there. Second of all, it burns people. It burns who's ever holding it if it doesn't belong to them. So first of all, why did it not burn Smaug at the very least? Maybe even Bilbo for taking it unjustly. Because Bilbo might not quite actually. He probably, even though he's like a good guy and he's doing presumably good things, maybe even with the Silmaril, I don't think he really had a right to it either. So why isn't it burning him or whatnot?
Right.
Based off what you heard, what do you think? I got one more point for why it's probably not.
It makes sense to me that it would not be. I could see how there's some parallels, but it feels like the Arkenstone is distinctly a dwarf thing, whereas the Silmarils feels like an elf thing. Even like the language, like Arkenstone is like kind of sharp and hard and dark sounding, and Silmaril is like very smooth, flowing sounding, like the elves are.
Right. So the book goes on to state too, or when I say the book, I mean the Silmarillion. The Silmarillion goes on to state that the elves knew the Silmarils could not be found or brought together again unless the world was broken and remade. So basically, you couldn't get all three back together unless that happens. So that kind of says, I don't know, that's like the absolute deal breaker for me too. Like they're not just going to find one.
What would this have to do with being brought together?
I don't think you can find either of the two, or even bring the one down from the sky until
understood.
all three together.
Okay.
I will say though, the Arkenstone, when Tolkien was writing this, he was also pretty heavy into the whole Silmarillion mythology and writing those stories too.
Okay.
Some of the very ones that I've been mentioning.
I thought that all came later.
Oh come on, Clifford! No.
Okay, sorry. You can cut that out.
Yeah, I will cut that out. He wrote most of the Silmarillion stories before he wrote Lord of the Rings.
I knew that.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. So
but I thought he did the Hobbit and then the Silmarillion.
No, he started this. The Hobbit was written in like the 30s. He started the Silmarillion in like 1917 during the war.
Oh, okay.
And he was writing that throughout like the 20s and into the 30s too.
Understood.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think like the Silmaril might have been inspired by the Arkenstone, but I don't think it was actually. I don't think it actually was an Arkenstone. I think the Arkenstone is something special to the Lonely Mountain, and I think it's kind of signifies the kingship of Thorin's people over the mountain. That's their symbol of their kingship, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's also like just a pretty coveted jewel that they want to have back in their hands.
Fair. Makes sense.
Right. So, a couple other things. There was probably a hero step in this chapter. Not quite sure. Gotta kind of evaluate a little bit. I am sure, but, we're just not going to reveal that for this chapter. Okay. So, even if there was a hero step in this chapter, I think it would just... It wouldn't be right to talk about it here. I think we gotta just keep waiting to see how this book goes. So yeah. So we'll hold off for that until the next chapter. Anything else about this one?
I don't think so. I'm looking forward to seeing where Smaug is.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
At this point in the story, it feels like he should be front and center.
Yeah, it does. It's kind of, I don't know, it was kind of annoying that he wasn't here the whole chapter.
Yeah.
But then again, we got a couple more 5 or 6 chapters ago in this book, so... You
know better than I do. But yeah, that seems right.
Yeah, so hopefully we got a bit more Smaug at least to cover that. I mean, that was the whole point of this trip, just to get back here.
Perhaps.
Let's do the ending for the one for tomorrow.
Okay.
Alright. Clifford, how you been?
Been pretty good. How about you, Patrick?
I've been pretty good. Good dinner. Some meat, some clementines.
Nice.
Beer.
It is indeed citrus season.
Yeah, dude. Oh, I mean, I go to town on clementines. I had like 6 in a row. That's pretty standard, actually.
They have big 15-pound bags of grapefruit and oranges at the grocery store here.
Yeah.
For like $5 each.
That's cool.
So
nice.
We've got probably 30 pounds of citrus right now. So I've been going through tons of grapefruit and oranges. Texas grapefruit are where it's at.
Yeah, I'm not a grapefruit guy. No surprise you are. No surprise. All right. So we got so we were supposed to review last week, but I couldn't see him, but now I can.
Uh-huh.
So here's
Sweet.
the review. I know who this is. So it's by Koala Zombie. That's actually Morgan, who's the one that draws the art for all the pictures.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like just like such a Medici as I just commission art to be made. But anyways, she writes in the subject, dorks. Wholesome dorks talk about disaster dwarves. And that's it. But she gave us 5 stars, so she'll get a beer koozie. Not because she's been doing all the art for us, but purely because
that's a thankless task.
Yeah, actually, well, I'll thank her at some point.
Good.
Yeah, so thank you, Morgan, or Koala Zombie. What else?
Nothing here.
Yeah, guys, reviews, super easy to win this prize. I mean, come on. She wrote, 6 words? Plus a subject of 1 word? And, yeah, I mean, no offense, that wasn't that great. It should be, if you write anything clever, I mean, you'll
Just remember, folks, you got a tough crowd.
Alright. Why don't we call it a week then? I almost forgot. Dude, guess what is this Sunday?
A bike race.
Clifford, you're being
What?
anticlimactic.
Help me out.
What other sports, what would happen this Sunday?
The Super Bowl?
Yeah, but we don't care about that. Right, there's the Cyclocross World Championship. There's the Cyclocross World Championships this Sunday. I'm excited to see that because, Wout Van Aert might be getting into shape again. He might actually care about this race. But
Okay.
Anyways, though, more importantly than both of those, actually not, maybe not important. No, whatever. More important than at least the Super Bowl is we will be releasing our Dragons special. Oh, yeah. So we worked pretty hard on that. It's pretty long. It's our longest episode yet. So we hope you'll check it out. It was pretty good. I was happy how it turned out.
I was too.
Honestly, though, I'm still in the middle of editing it, so it's long. All right.
Well, when someone asks you who you're pulling for in the Super Bowl, you can tell them Dragons.
No, I'll probably root for Tom Brady. He gets a lot of crap.
Yeah? So you're going to root for him because he's not the underdog?
No, I'll root for him because
he gets hate for being too popular.
No, the NFL had mostly for that stupid Deflategate thing where that was a non-story, but they dragged out for 2 years, just like trashing his name. When, to cover up any sort of terrible, terrible stuff that league has going on. I mean, there's just so many problems in the NFL, and it's like, oh, we're going to look at the guy who's, in quotes, a cheater, even though he did, nothing of significance.
It's an interesting take. That is the most controversial opinion I've heard about that. No, I'm serious. That's pretty interesting.
That's the right opinion, dude.
Yeah, I'm curious. I don't follow the NFL all that much, but
I'm glad I don't anymore. Oh my gosh, I couldn't. Yeah, I can't. American sports, man, it's just too much.
Only for the most dedicated.
The boring parts of sports make the exciting parts of sports more exciting. You have to remember that. That's how you should approach every sporting event.
I want everything to be epic all the time.
No.
Non-stop epicness.
But it wouldn't be as epic as one really epic part after a lot of not so epic part.
Yeah, I'm just messing with you. I know. The contrast is good.
All right, let's end it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, y'all.